All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Talking to everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Ray. We're just going to wait one more minute as we let a few more people trickle in before we really dive into tonight's exciting webinar. So thank you for coming. Thank you for those of you who are learning how to use our chat feature on the side. This is awesome. We want to know all your questions. So my name's Kate. I am the president of student success here at A-List Education. So before we get started and while we wait for a few others to join in, I'm going to share a poll here. I want to know who has heard the announcement that the SAT is going fully digital by 2024. So I will go ahead and share that here. If you guys could let us know, it's some exciting breaking news in the education world. So it's exciting. What do you guys think? Scott, Kate? I know we're going to talk about it, but initial thoughts?
I have many. I'm excited for. There's a lot of reasons behind the decision. It's going to be really curious. One of the things as a test prep nerd, one of the things that's going to be exciting is watching the ACT and SAT sort of fight over turf over the next couple of years, and see what the ACT's response to this is. So,
right.
Yeah, it is funny. I feel like everything we read is like the SAT is doing this, and the ACT also says that it will do it soon, right after.
yeah, and they both do that. Like
They do, yeah.
the SAT, and during the most recent test change for the SAT, it became more like the ACT for a variety of reasons. And so they both mimic each other. They're both sort of heading in the direction where they're both kind of end up in the same place. But it'll be interesting. I know College Board has done a lot of legwork already to put this in place, and at great expense to them, because this transition is not cheap, and it's a difficult one. So I know that this has been something that they've been thinking about doing for a long time, and the fact that they're ready to do it and announce it right now is pretty interesting. And we'll see how long it takes ACT to catch up.
Great.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be better on balance for students.
It will be. There's certainly better experience for students and admins. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's dive in. We got some awesome answers about, we're about 50-50, right? So about 50% of the people here have heard about this announcement before today, but happy to bring some information to some of you here. So again, as Scott mentioned, they will make sure to highlight and address that big announcement. So it's really exciting. But before we do that, I do want to do some introductions. So thank you for everyone attending tonight's parent webinar. So we are A-List Education, powered by Testive. So as you all know, for when you signed up, the topic of tonight is going to be focused around planning and timelines for testing and college advising. So we're in a new year, 2022, at that time where you should really start mapping out what those next steps mean for your student, whether they be juniors, whether they be seniors. If you guys are just kind of getting started as freshman, sophomore, these are all, we are going to tap all of those grades tonight. So mainly, I want to kind of tell a little bit about us first. So here at A-List Education, we focus around everything with educational resources. So happy to bring information to you all here tonight. I encourage you to continue to ask questions, engage with us. At A-List Education, we specialize in everything from academic tutoring, test prep, advising, and really just supporting all those college-bound students. So we wanted to bring all that information and research of what we know in today's world and the educational services to you guys here. So let's see. Let's go ahead and dive into those introductions. All right. So as I mentioned when we first signed in, I'm the host tonight. My name is Kate Crockett. I am president of student success with A-List Education. I've been working with students in ed tech for about 4 to 5 years, and mostly my role consists of working with parents. So I also work with schools to help bring continued educational support to all types of students. So I will be actually answering questions in chat. So again, encourage you to participate, ask questions there. Let's make sure we cover things that matter and mean things to you. And then as for our speakers, we have Scott Suzel here. He's one of our educators at A-List Education, and he's college admissions advisor, instructor, curriculum development. He has about 15 years plus experience in this, in the education world. So I'm grateful to have him here tonight. And then we also have Kate and Nick. Sorry, let me get there. So we have Kate, and Kate is our director of college advising. She's been in the college advising space for about 10 years and has helped hundreds of students getting into some of their competitive programs in schools like Cornell, NYU, UCLA. So just to name a few, you guys can see those there. And then we also have Nick Mesikowski. He'll be jumping in as well. He's one of our educators, actually from Alabama, and went to Vanderbilt. But outside of working with students, he's has a true passion in theater, and which is really awesome. So he not only gets to work with students, but he's working playwright and freelance as a freelance copywriter. So he will also be answering questions in here just a little bit. So that's our lineup. Super excited to be bringing you all the information here tonight. So I will go ahead and kick it over to you, Scott and Kate, and you guys can kind of dive in and let's talk about planning for 2022.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. And I just, so Nick was with the student up until very recently, and he's actually in the room. I looked at it, Kate, but he's having trouble getting
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
We may or may not see him. We'll see.
Yep. Great.
Yeah, let's, without further ado, let's move on because we do have some stuff to cover. And I do want to address the whole, the big news about the SAT before we kind of get into anything else, since it just happened. Okay. Here's the agenda. We did introductions. We're going to talk about the breaking news about the SAT going digital. But after that, it's mostly about just planning for the year and when certain things and deadlines occur, both for the test preparation part of it and for college admissions as well. We'll talk about a guide to study planning for this year, admission dates and deadlines, and we'll sort of march through the year from spring through winter for anyone who's a 10th or 11th grader right now. So people who are 10th and 11th graders right now, this is mostly directed towards you guys because you guys are the ones who are like in it right now. 11th graders right now are going to be seniors in the fall, and that's when college admissions deadlines are and that kind of thing. If you are younger than 10th grade right now, this is still relevant information. It's just that, it's really, really good to know what's in front of you. And the earlier you start planning, the better. And so, hey, Nick, you made it.
I made it. I figured it out. All good.
So I know I was completely lost without you. I'm so glad you're here. If you're in ninth grade or if you're in eighth grade or whatever age your kids are, just understand that these timelines exist in the future, and that it's just as important to be ready for them. The earlier you start, the better. So okay, moving on. Let's talk about this breaking news that the SAT goes digital. Nick, were you aware of this? Did you hear about this? Of course.
It was, yeah. And it seems like it's something that we all sort of saw coming. I mean, it wasn't like so shocking.
College Board's been
this
talking about this for a while. I didn't think it was going to happen this soon, honestly. It kind of caught me a little bit off guard. I thought they were going to probably make the announcement later this year, but I know that it was something that was on the verge of happening. So let's talk about a little bit about what these changes are, first of all. And I know, first of all, let me just say this off the bat. For some of you who are older and who maybe are already 11th graders, the fact that the test is going digital doesn't impact you that much. I will say that just keep preparing for the test the way that it is, which is a paper test, and be glad that you're not a guinea pig in this digital test world, because the first round of students who take this digital test will be. And there are advantages to the digital test, but if you don't have the opportunity to take the test, the digital version of the test, that is totally fine. Just think about the positives. Be a glasses half full kind of person. There are a lot of advantages to being able to hold a pencil and write stuff on paper when you're taking a test, and those are going to be somewhat limited once it goes digital. It's going to be a little bit harder in certain ways to take the test. So, okay, real quick, as far as what's changing. The digital SAT will be easier to take, easier to give, and more relevant. This is according to Priscilla Rodriguez, who's Vice President of College Readiness Assessments at College Board. The reason that they're saying this and using this kind of language is because of the change and the shift in the way that people are feeling about standardized tests in general, and because of the effect the pandemic had on whether or not schools are test optional or test required. Previously, there were about 45% of the schools were test optional at the beginning of the pandemic. Now it's closer to 75, 80%. And but at the same time, there's still a space for the SAT and the ACT. And I want to talk about that a little bit more in a second. It's just different now. Instead of a requirement, it now becomes something that you can use to your advantage, and a lot of students do. So they said that we're taking full advantage of what delivering an assessment digitally makes possible. With input from educators and students, we're adapting to ensure we continue to meet their evolving needs. I'll talk about what a digital test, what are some of the advantages of a digital test in a second. And the fact that the test is now going to be adaptive is a huge thing. Among the changes, the digital SAT will be shorter. Great. That's terrific news for anyone with a short attention span, or anyone who just hates sitting down for a test for 4 hours. And, that's most people who aren't Nick and I. What else is different? The digital test is going to feature shorter reading passages. That's huge. A lot of students are kind of frustrated by the length of the reading passages, with one question tied to each. So you're not, digging through like large blocks of text. The passage will reflect a wider range of topics that represent work students are going to read in college. Calculators will be allowed in the entire math section. So gone is the no calculator math section. Students and educators get scores back in days instead of weeks. And it reflects the range of paths students take after high school. The digital SAT Suite score reports are going to have more information and stuff. So that's all interesting. So that's what's changing. What are people saying? Well, they've already run out a sort of example of this to students, to beta test. And so we kind of already know what the students are saying about it. And some of the things they're saying are interesting. Here is a student, Natalia Casio, who says, it felt a lot less stressful and a whole lot quicker than I thought it'd be. The test, instead of being a full 4-hour test with all the proctoring involved and everything else, is now 2 hours. The actual test time before was about 3 hours, but with all the proctoring and everything else involved, it's a 4-hour commitment. And now it's a 2-hour test. So she said, it's a lot quicker than I thought it'd be. The shorter passages helped me concentrate more on what the question wanted me to do. And this last line is interesting to me. Plus, you don't have to remember to bring a calculator or a pencil, which is intriguing, because I'm wondering how someone's going to sketch certain things out without a pencil and scratch paper. Other tests that have gone digital, although you're not required to bring a pencil, it's still a really, really good idea to bring one, because you need to sketch through work somehow. And the other part of it is you don't need a calculator. Well, they said there's no calculator section anymore, so you can definitely have a calculator. And it makes me wonder if they're going to involve some kind of integrated calculator into the test. If they do that, then everyone will be on the same playing field with the technology they get to use during the test, and everyone's going to have the same access to a calculator, instead of some people having big giant like processing computers like the TI-84 and stuff, which you can do almost anything in. So that may be another interesting thing to keep an eye on. In the same pilot, every test proctor who participated responded that the experience administering the digital SAT was the same or better. Well, of course they think that, because they're not getting boxes of test mail to them, and they don't have to pass them out and all that other annoying stuff that is involved in proctoring the SAT, or at least was. So that's what people are saying about it. Now, here's the part that I like. The digital SAT is an option to show your strengths, and really this applies to everyone right now. This is what the SAT and ACT are right now for students, given the new environment, applying to college. The SAT does continue, this is true, continues to play a vital role in a holistic admissions process and continues to connect students to post-secondary and scholarship opportunities. That is still true. When nearly every college went test optional during the pandemic, millions of students still took the test, and that's true. The trend has continued. Most students want to take the test, find out how they did, and then decide if they want to submit their scores to colleges. So just because you have a score doesn't mean you have to submit it. You can still apply without a score to schools that are test optional if you don't feel your score gives you a competitive advantage. But to a lot of students, getting a test score is a chance to make you a more competitive applicant. And that's true for anyone at any time. And so it's still a good idea to try your best to maximize your potential score on the test. When surveyed, 83% of students said they wanted the option to submit their scores. This finding remains consistent, and this is also important, and this is why they're making this change. This finding remains consistent whether or not students have taken the SAT and across race, ethnicity, and parents' level of education. And so the big pushback against standardized testing in general is the equity piece of it. And some people have access to technology or the ability to pay for tests and go sit on additional administrations of the test, and other people don't. And that is College Board heard those concerns. They're attempting to address them. The bottom part is interesting too. In a largely test optional world, the SAT is a lower stakes test in college admissions. This is true now. Now that it is not a requirement to take the SAT to get into schools, it is a lower stake test stakes test. And this is true even before the digital test. This is true now. The fact that it's lower stakes is nice because it's an awful lot of pressure, for a student, a young person trying to get ready for this test, and you feel like your whole life is dependent upon the score. And it's not, but it's still good to get the highest score you can. So submitting a score is optional for every type of college. We want the SAT to be the best possible option for students. The SAT allows every student, regardless of where they go to high school, to be seen and to access opportunities that will shape their lives and careers. And so going forward, they want the SAT to be judged holistically based on where you are and where you're located and the school that you went to and the opportunities that you have there for additional support. And they factor all those things in, or they want to factor all those things in the future. There's a large number of students, large number, who last year took the SAT and improved their ability. They outperformed, in other words, their GPA. And when students do that, it gives them a better opportunity to get into school than they previously had. And that's the reason that a lot of students, it's still a very, very good idea for them to take it. Okay, that was a lot of words. Any questions? Let me see. Let me go check out the chat, see if there are any questions in there.
Lots of Florida talk in there.
Yeah, so it's just Florida talk. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I have a kind of prediction about the SAT, which is that, it's likely a lot of these schools are going to remain test optional by 2024, right?
Yeah.
And like you were saying, Scott, now a lot of schools are test optional, but it's still a really good idea to take the SAT. And if you get a score that is impressive to a school, that's only going to help your application, right? And I'm sure that situation will stay the same for 2024. And I have a feeling that if the SAT is this much more easy to take or accessible, there's going to be even more, whether or not schools are test optional, I think there's actually going to be even more of an expectation that more students will take it. And, because it's so much easier to take, it's less time and all of that. So I have a feeling that in doing this, the SAT has actually made it so that it isn't really going anywhere. It's shortening, but I think that the expectation, especially at a lot of prestigious schools, is going to be that, okay, we're test optional, but if you want to get in, you got to show us everything that you could possibly show us. That's
a really good point, Nick. And that's true even now. We're finding that at competitive schools, most students who get in do have a SAT or ACT score. And Jennifer has a really good question. I'm going to get to that in a second. But with respect to it being easy, this is a savvy move by the SAT, and it's good timing. This is really what they needed to do before the test became relevant. And look, standardized testing is sort of people think of it as a necessary evil. There needs to be some metrics by which people gauge, a student's readiness for college, and GPAs are derived from very different places, and schools are sometimes out of a 5.0 scale, and there's 4.0 scales, and there's different academic workloads and rigor. And so all of those different pieces come into play. And so that's the idea behind standardized tests is supposed to be a leveling of the playing field. That is, it's very arguable about whether or not that was actually the case. So they pulled it off successfully. But in the future, at least it seems they're attempting to do that. One of the good things, Nick, like you said, about more people are going to take it now that it's shorter, it's also going to be offered more times during the year. It's been much, much easier for students to be able to take the test multiple times and at a time that fits their own schedule. As far as the benefit of taking the SAT versus the ACT, well, first of all, let me say that I firmly believe that the ACT is going to respond to this in some way as soon as they possibly can. Otherwise, they're going to. And it's weird to think about it like this, but the SAT and ACT are businesses, and they're competing for market share with each other, just like any other businesses are, even though the market is your children. That's kind of the way it is. The ACT should follow suit at some point, but we'll keep our eyes and ears open for that. As far as the benefit of taking one or the other, is none. I have very, very rarely in 15 years have seen students score more than 5 percentile points apart on one test or the other. Generally speaking, if you're good at one of the tests, you're good at the other one too. The preferences that students have for one over the other matter more. It's more about comfort level with the two tests, and the test that the student likes better, the format and the timing, the student should stick with that one and just focus on it. Colleges don't care. There is not a single college that says, actually, we prefer the SAT or the ACT. That's just not the case anymore. The test started out as sort of regional tests, but that's To some degree, that's still true, but at the college level, they do not care at all. Students should pick one and go with it. Oh, I think I accidentally answered the second question. So it's a good debate to have. And if you're really early on in the process, look, if a student's already taken a few practice tests from one or the other, and they feel comfortable with that, they can just roll with that. If you're early on in the process, so if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you want to do some looking into which test you prefer, we have the capability to give you that opportunity. We have we run free practice tests regularly. You're welcome to do a free practice test with us. We can officially proctor it, or you can take it on your own, and you can get scores back for both tests, and then figure out which one you like better. So, all right, moving on. Last thing I want to talk about with the SAT going digital is adaptive testing. The reason that they're able to make the test shorter is because it's going to become an adaptive test. This is going to completely change the strategy involved in the test. The GMAT is also an adaptive test it's a test you take before you go into business school. And in these tests, these adaptive tests, generally speaking, it locks you into questions as you do them because it's feeding you either more difficult or easier questions as you work through the test. If you're doing really well, it starts feeding you more difficult questions. First thing you got to do is get over that psychologically, because it's not necessarily bad news if you're all of a sudden seeing really hard questions and getting them wrong half the time. You could have a great score. So essentially, as you move to the right, like you can see this chart, I know it's really quickly thrown together, but as you're doing questions, your responses will begin to feed you harder or easier questions. And essentially, the level of question that you're working at is your score. If you it's trying to put you in a position where you're missing about half the questions you see, so it feels uncomfortable. But what they're really doing is cutting out a lot of the extraneous work that students were doing before. Beforehand, if a whole group of students were 90th percentile scorers, they used to have to do 30 questions that all of them are going to get 100%. And that's not really helpful in any way, other than the students just kind of sitting there doing questions for a while. So this, adaptive testing eliminates that. You get to a student's ability level more quickly, and that's why they were able to cut the timing down for it.
Hey, Scott, I think we have a quick question from Jennifer, which I think I think it applies here, but I think it's multi-layered, right? So she had asked if, does it count against you the more times that you take a test? But also, do colleges look at it? But I'd also like if you could comment on what test burnout looks like. Doesn't make sense to just keep taking tests. So would you mind highlighting some of that here too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about there. Just really quickly, just off the top, it does not count against you the more you take it. And that's not true for all standardized testing. Like if you're taking the GMAT to get into business school or the law school admissions test, then it does count against you if you're taking it multiple times. But for these tests, because you direct your scores out to the colleges, it doesn't matter how many times you take it. There are students who take the test 9 times. Is that the number of times you should take the test? I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends. There are certain advantages to taking the test multiple times. One is that you can super score. A lot of schools will accept super scores, which means you're pulling your best scores from multiple sections. If your super scores exist over a span of 2 tests or 3 tests, then you would send all 3 of those tests to the school and they would compile the super score. But other than that, the schools don't see any of your other scores. If you're sending one score and you've taken the test 8 times, they only see the one you sent. Nick, you have anything to add about taking the test multiple times? Any advice on whether or not that's a good idea? And is there a sort of, is there a number that you should take it?
I mean, I think a golden number is 3 to 4 times, maybe. Yeah. Like your first go is often, I mean, you should, as many times as you may have taken practice tests, when the first time you're sitting in the testing room, you're generally there's a lot of pressures you didn't maybe anticipate, a lot of, the distraction or something that you didn't, other people in the room, your first time, a lot of students will come back and say, oh, that was horrible. And it's it's going to be maybe not perfect, right? It's your first time doing it. By the second time you do it, a lot of those anxieties will you'll know what to anticipate in the room. And by the third time and fourth time, I find that students can really hit that goal score, assuming they've been working on it regularly. So I mean, yeah, I guess there are students who take it 9 times. I think you eventually hit some diminishing returns there. You should probably work on your college essays instead. But
Yes.
if you have limited time, but I'd say like 3 to 4 times is a really good amount for most of the students I work with.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. Okay, moving on. A guide to study planning. So I want to talk about a little bit about like, so how do you study? Like, how do you study for one of these tests? The first thing you want to know is that, the SAT and ACT are not like, it's not an IQ test. It's not anything like that. It's not an intelligence test. It is a test that is completely learnable top to bottom of the whole thing. So it's based on stuff that you do in high school. And so that means that big improvements are possible. And this is really true of any standardized test. If you know what to expect, the structure of the test, and you carry certain strategies with you into the test, you will score better than you did just sitting down and taking the test cold. That's true for everyone. So what does study planning actually look like? So we'll talk about the sort of study planning over the course of the year. Before we jump into that, let's talk about how important each piece of your application is, because people have had a lot of questions about this as things have sort of changed with the test optional environment. As you can see here, the most important thing is still your grades, your academics. The grades in your college prep classes, the strength of your curriculum are also factored in. But the cool thing is, like, as you get older, as you matriculate through high school, you're able to influence those things to the left of the red line less and less. And so the stuff that's to the right of the red line becomes the stuff that you can still do to make a difference and to make yourself stand out on an application. And so they become more important over time because, once you're a senior, your GPA is not completely locked in. You don't want to get senioritis, certainly. But it's more difficult just because there's so much more data in place to raise your GPA a whole lot in your senior year. So these other things are completely in front of you, and you can influence all of them. Do you have anything to add, Kate, about the importance of your pieces of your application?
Is running in the background. Yeah, I would say like what's great about being a sophomore and a junior is that a lot of your work right now is working a lot on making sure that your grades are fantastic, and then otherwise, the tests like these essays, recommendation letters, demonstrating interest, all these other facets are things that you can control that are a little bit less, daunting to handle than like all of your grades, which is such a long slog over the course of your 4 years. And, every kid has struggled with a grade, with a semester or two, or with a class or two, especially now. So all of these other factors are the ways that you can also compensate for any gaps that you have in your grades.
What's going on in that blender? And is it a margarita? And can I come over?
I don't know, but it smells so good. And I'm ready. I'm ready for it. It's good. I think it's
So here is a timeline for the year, and we can actually make this available to you if you'd like a copy of this. It sort of just walks you from the spring of your sophomore year all the way through the fall of your senior year, which for most students encompasses all of your, the range of your test prep and college admissions and everything else. So this is a really good thing to look at. So depending on where you are, this applies to you in different ways. If you are in 10th grade right now and spring is coming up, you can see that little guy on the starting blocks getting ready to start this process. Is now a bad time to study? No, it's not. A lot of parents that I talk to are concerned about the fact that their students haven't seen some of the stuff on the test in school yet. And the PSAT is the same in 10th grade and 11th grade. They both take the PSAT 10. So when you're a 10th grader, yeah, even the PSAT has stuff on it that you haven't necessarily seen in school yet. So it's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? Do I wait until my students had all these courses, all these classes before I start to study? No, you don't. The likelihood is that those classes make up a pretty small proportion of the stuff that's on the test. There's plenty of stuff you can get good at right now. Beyond that, learning concepts for test prep is a little bit different. It's than academics. Academics oftentimes rewards people for rote memorization instead of really truly understanding the nature of a concept. And so studying for test prep or for an SAT or ACT can actually give you different insight into the stuff you need to know and you're about to learn in school anyway. And so if a student is studying well for the SAT or ACT, and they're covering content that they haven't seen in school yet, it's going to be a lot easier to cover that stuff or learn it when you're actually in school. So there's more than one benefit to starting early, preparing for these tests. Now, I don't want anyone to feel like if you're a junior and you're sitting here like, well, I haven't started yet. Does that mean, what should I even try? Should I just buy a van and go live down by the river? No, you shouldn't. You have plenty of time to study now. It's okay. That puts you at the bottom line right there. And there's still plenty of time. You can see it's labeled as your backup test sitting and then the last chance test sitting. That's still a lot of chances. Like, you look at all the tests that are in that window from February to December. You still have plenty of chances to test. Like I said, ideally in a perfect world, would you start at sophomore year? Sure. Because it's the longer runway you have, the easier it is and less stressful it is. Sure, that's true. But you still have plenty of time if you're a junior to start now and get a great score. Anything you want to add, Nick, before we move on to the next slide?
Echo what you said about, students, especially with math, they tend to find like, I don't know all the math on the SAT or the ACT. Like, how am I should I just wait till I see it in school? And when it comes to math on the ACT, SAT, you generally need to know so much less about it for the ACT and SAT than you do for school. Like polynomials, right? It's like in school, you're dividing them with long division and doing like synthetic division and finding roots. No, on the ACT, on the SAT, you need to know like this much, like a few things. And if you, have a tutor or have a test prep book or something that can tell you, even if you haven't seen it in class yet, what those few things are, you don't necessarily have to wait for school to show you that, right? So no, I've never suggested that someone wait till a class talks about something before they start prepping for it on the SAT. Just, start as early as you can, and, your test prep will probably make up anything you haven't seen in school yet.
Yeah. And if you do wait until after you see everything, you're going to be behind. You're going to be behind the
yeah, that'll be about December of your junior year. Right. And they don't know. Exactly. You'll have no test left to take. Yeah, exactly.
Kate Crockett, how do you feel about polynomials?
I'm losing connection.
Oh no. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Kate Manier, this is all you. College application timeline for juniors and seniors. This is super helpful deadlines.
Yeah, this is just so you all, I know that we've got a lot of sophomores and juniors, but it's good to just see what's ahead of you. This is a really, really simplified version of what you're going to be looking at in terms of deadlines, and we will start in spring of junior year. So obviously take the SAT, ACT is there. If you've started earlier, then you can definitely have taken it already for many times your junior year. 1-2 critical things you obviously would want to do. Spring of junior year, we always like to have students start thinking about their college essays starting in spring, but definitely end of junior year asking for recommendations. Hopefully, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in our like season by season breakdown of what to do. Hopefully you already have those folks lined up, you know who they are and you have those relationships, but spring of junior year is the time to ask. Summer of junior year is when you're getting to your school list. You're going on school tours and doing info sessions. You're going to work on your college essay because Nick, as a college advisor, has probably experienced this. Summer happens, kids are like, oh, I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm doing stuff. And then the school year starts, and then it's like, well, I can't work on my essay because of school. So you got to do it during the summer. It's helping you. And if you have way more time to really think about it deeply and not be so distracted by other stuff. August of your senior year is a pretty big year, pretty big month. The Common App opens. You'll want to finalize your college list and essays and begin your supplemental materials. So any other essays that you have to do, if you've got a portfolio, working on that. If you're an athlete and have a video, you want to work on that. September of senior year, complete your activity list for the Common App. That is, we can talk about that a little bit, but you only have 10 activities that you can talk about in the Common App. And you can only talk about them in about 140 characters, like almost a tweet. You can talk about your entire activities list. That does sound really difficult to do, but we have definitely tips on how you can talk about your activities, and there are many other opportunities to talk about them. But the activity list is kind of an overlooked but very important part of the Common Application. You will also want to complete your resume to add anything extra that didn't make those 10 activity slots. Continue working on your supplements. Then October, senior year, is the real go time. Any college advisor knows that that is probably the busiest time because you're prepping for early applications. So most early applications are due November 1st. And any student that we have, we certainly want students to use that early application strategy to their advantage, because your odds definitely go up when you apply earlier. So definitely finalize some early applications and submit those before the day of the deadline, not the day of, so that the Common App crashes and then you can't submit. And then November of senior year, it's compiling the rest of your materials, getting to work on your regular decision applications. All said and done, it will be over by January or February. It's a tough few months, but also it's the biggest return on investment you'll have on any work that you do. So, and keeping it on a strict timeline like this really helps keep things in order, keep your ducks in a row.
Yeah, once you start to fall behind the timeline, it gets harder and harder to catch back up. Kate, what's the latest that students can actually apply? What are the actual latest deadlines from a schools? Like, understanding that it's we want to avoid applying at the last moment, but what is that last moment?
Oh man, it really depends. So some schools, regular decision is January 1st. That's it, you're done. Some other schools, like I would say the more selective a school, the harder they stick to that early January deadline. Some schools will allow rolling admissions, which means you could apply as late as April, but rolling also means that they evaluate applications right when they come in. So by that, you actually don't want to wait till April because they might have already filled their class by then. Yeah. So probably the latest, February 1st, 15th. We've got a couple of stragglers that we're working with who are still applying to schools like Michigan and Wisconsin. And that's February 1st.
Gotcha. All right. We're going to keep moving because adding the digital SAT stuff it may put us in a bit of a tight timeline. So we're going to move on here. So now we're going to kind of walk through the seasons and talk about like what you can be doing, whether you're a 10th or 11th grader. So as we enter the spring season coming up, people who are currently 10th and 11th graders, what should you be doing for test preparation? If you're a 10th grader right now, it's a good time, like we talked about with Jennifer's question earlier. This is a good time to explore the SAT and ACT and figure out which test you like better. You want to try to kind of make that decision as quickly as you can, but you still have time to make that decision right now if you're currently a 10th grader. Going into this summer is when most students begin the bulk of their very, very rigorous preparation work to try to get their score up as much as they can. And there are plenty of students that just go in and take the test without actually preparing for it. A lot of students do that. I mean, I would never recommend that, but a lot of students do that. And knowing that that's the case, that's who you're competing against, because it's all about percentile. That's who you're competing against. Just understand that wherever you start on this test, your maximum ability is going to be way higher than that. And so, the very first step for anyone, whether you're a 10th grader or if you're an 11th grader who's been studying, or if you haven't, the place to start is to just take a diagnostic test and figure out where you are. The preparation process is a lot more efficient if you know where the bulk of your focus should be as you're preparing. It's definitely not the case that every student should prepare in the same way. Otherwise, everyone would just start at A and go through Z, and it's just all students are different. They have different capabilities. They have different things that they know and remember from the math they did 3 years ago. And so making sure that you're focused on the stuff that represents your best opportunity to improve at all times is the best way to do it. And the only way to do that is to get access to tests and start off with a diagnostic and get access to materials that helps you practice in between, the different tests that you're taking. I do not recommend taking a bunch of practice tests early on if you're a 10th grader right now. Like, take one and save the rest of them that are available, and then begin to focus on the stuff that like I said, represents an opportunity for you to gain points on the test. If you are an 11th grader right now, you should probably start to actually put on the schedule when you're going to be studying and when you're going to be practice testing. Practice tests are valuable because it's good practice for the endurance of the test. And it's also an opportunity to find out where you are. Beyond that, taking practice tests, you're probably not improving while you take the practice test. You may improve while you go back and review it and try to look up concepts that you didn't understand or how to solve certain problems. Then you're improving. But it's that practice in between tests that's most important. But you should have some kind of schedule in place. If you're taking a test every 3 weeks or something like that, that's fine. Just have a plan and have it on your calendar. If you have it on your calendar, you're a lot more likely to actually do it.
Suggest signing up for a test.
Yes.
Like, that's a few months down the road. There's an ACT in April. I mean, there's an ACT in February too, but if you haven't started prepping for that, I might not necessarily. And there's one in June, and I would sign up for it because there are, only so many spots that are near you, wherever you are. And the saddest things I've ever seen are students prepping for a test and then they realize they never signed up, or they thought they did and it didn't, and then there are no spots near them or at all. Especially with COVID protocols and stuff, you just, even if you feel like, I haven't even started, just set a date. Just say, fine, I'll do it in April, I'll do it in June. And then you can even work backwards, and it can help you plan, like Scott was saying, and put those practice tests on the calendar. But just go to act.org or collegeboard.org, College Board for the SAT, and register. That's the best thing you can do.
Sure. Yeah, and just to add on to what Nick was saying, Scott, you can give your story too, but we see this all the time. Parents will even say that they're planning on signing up for a test. Student starts prepping and spots fill up. Things happen because of COVID. Don't ever be in a place where you are scrambling to try to find a testing facility or a testing place, because it's the last spot you can get to. So yeah, this just bringing this all together of just that planning piece. We would say this in a pre-pandemic era, but this is even more important now. Make sure that you have spots booked, and make sure
I'll try to, as quickly as I can, relay this story. I had one of my ACT students was testing in November. Now, luckily she's just a junior, so she's still fine. She's going to take the test on February 12th, and she'll still, she has time. But her test site was canceled. The ACT was canceled through no fault of the students, no fault of anyone. The proctor got COVID. The backup proctor also had COVID. And then they have a third backup proctor who just said she was busy, and they could not administer the test at her site.
Yep.
She tried to get in at another site, but she couldn't get put on a waiting list because the waiting list deadline had passed. And so they didn't inform her that they weren't going to be having the opportunity to take the ACT until the week of the test. This isn't the November test. So not for my student, thank goodness, but for other students, they were seniors. This is fall of their senior year, and this was their last chance to take the ACT. And so you just never know what's going to happen. Make sure you actually, sign up for the test early. And like we said before, there's no penalty for taking a test and not doing well. So if you don't feel you're ready, okay, we understand that. But get in there and just take the test and get that rust off, like Nick was talking about. Get accustomed to the testing site and what it's like to get proctored for the test and that kind of thing. So yeah, just sign up. College apps for spring.
Yes. Okay. So if you're a 10th grader and an 11th grader, there are a couple of overlaps. Obviously, as you saw, the biggest part of any college application is going to be your academic performance in your day-to-day life. And that can look like your grades in school and your overall course rigor at school. But that can also look like academics outside of school. That third stripe was actually college and dual enrollment courses. So one great summer activity that we always recommend to students is doing some kind of summer enrichment program, whether that's through a pre-college program or specifically something online that's free, but something that simply demonstrates that you have a very specific academic interest and you're pursuing it outside of class, right? College admissions officers really want to know what you do outside of school. What do you do with all of your time? And there are so many fantastic pre-college courses that can also help you get a better sense of what you are passionate about if you're not quite there yet. So like I remember I took a pre-college writing course at Brown, and that was what made me really so excited to major in English and be in like writing. That's what kind of like awoke my passion. So I think that would be something that you should definitely research in the spring as both a 10th and 11th grader. Activities are more important than ever. Obviously, I know it's tough because of COVID, but there are so many things that you can do now with your time outside of school that can really make an impact on your application. As the SAT is not viewed by every single student, the other factors become more important. So activities are certainly one of those things. If you're not interested in going the pre-college route, I know those things cost money. Then you can start working on and developing your own project. This can be through a school activity, like a formal school activity, or it could be something that you do on your own. I know lots of students who have had a lot of success by actually just joining groups from like the internet of professional artists. And she was a 16-year-old girl who really liked art but was not a professional. She actually joined some on-site drawing groups, and that was one of the most positive experiences that she's actually had, like in an activity. And it kind of made her put herself out there a little bit, which always looks very good in a college application, right? And a great question from Jennifer, the AP capstone. I mean, I don't know, Scott, how you feel about it. I feel like a capstone project in high school is fantastic. Like, I think it's a great move. And I have a sophomore who's working on something like that now. And I would say that a lot of college applications can show well-roundedness, but focus is really a strong way to stand out, and capstones can help you get that focus. I also know that some capstones do like mentoring as part of it, which I think always is amazing. Having the opportunity to give back to classmates that are under you is also fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Also, capstone projects are also very much like a collegiate undertaking. They represent sort of the kind of work that you're likely to do in college as well. So it's a good indicator that it's a workload that you can handle. Okay, extracurriculars year by year. We've got 9th, 10th grade, 11th, 12th grade. Tell me a little bit about ECs, Kate, which are more important now than ever.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I mean, I think I basically said it, but I would say the trend should be kind of an upward trend for extracurriculars from 9th grade to 12th grade. I would say that 9th to 10th grade is the exploration time. You don't want to just say in 9th grade, I am a professional fencer, and that's what I'm doing without having really like gamed it out, having explored it yourself, having figured out if you've got like the skills and the passion for it that it takes to do something really in depth. So 9th and 10th grade, it's all about finding that thing that can allow you to put your skills to their best use. That can be like a great return on your investment of time, because time is limited when you're in high school. So 9th and 10th grade, start looking for those things, journal what you think about all of your activities, say no to very little. That's what I say to all of my 9th, 10th graders. Just do anything that is offered to you, because everything is information, even if you're like, I don't know if this is the best thing for me to do. As you get to 11th and 12th grade, You want to increase like the depth of the project. So whatever your activity is, you want to get more knowledgeable in it. You want to get more experience in it and start becoming more of an authority on it. Take on a leadership role if you can by starting something new by yourself or by becoming a leader in the activity. And then also there's impact. Like think about what you could do that could actually make your community, your school, or even a group of friends better. Because those things are really what are important about extracurriculars. Please.
Junior who, so it's January of junior year. And he was I started working with him. He was sort of worried about, his resume for college and his extracurriculars. And the tack he was taking was, let's just get as much stuff on my resume at this point as I can. But he's a junior, so he was like, well, what if I just like do mock trial, but like I don't really have time, so I'll just go to just enough like meetings to make it technically, and then my name's on it, so I can technically put it. And I was like, will that be one more thing on my resume? Okay, but like at this point, as a junior, you want some thing that you can put your name to and say, I did this project, or I took this initiative. And even if it's not part of an extracurricular, a club or something that has a name on it, if you have some product you made, thing you wrote, or a business you started or whatever, I was like, you have, you're the rest of your junior year, the summer before senior year, and even like senior fall to actually not necessarily just tack on more little things, but to do something that's really unique in you and that you could write about in your college essay and put your name to it. And he didn't really do that. But and honestly, he sort of was struggling then by the time that college essays would come out about what to write about. And I was like, look, I told you 6-7 months ago, we got to do something that's kind of big at this point, right? If you want to get in at least to schools that are on the more prestigious side. So that depth, leadership, and impact, it really does matter. And you want to look well-rounded. You want a bunch of stuff on your resume, but it's not about like checking the boxes of, I have now 12 technical things I've done in school. It's better to have like 6 and have one of them be like really big, or 2 of them be really big.
If you're looking at someone's application and one is that they spent one weekend, this is one that I had one school that I worked with a lot, and every student had this item on their resume. They worked at a veterinarian's office and they were like cleaning up after animals, and they did it once, and it was just like clearly something just so they could have one more thing on their resume. That, or I find students bury the lead a ton. So they'll be like, I have nothing cool that I've ever done. And then you just have to, everyone has something cool that they've done because they have hours after school where they're doing stuff that they enjoy doing. And that is cool. And you can explain why that is cool. Sometimes it is Fortnite, but like Fortnite can be formalized into an activity. I've seen it before. So I think it's really important that students understand that formalized activities are great, but what are like amazing are the ones that really connect, not you plugging into something else, but like something that you're doing that connects really deeply with you, because extracurriculars and essays go certainly hand in hand. So like if you find an extracurricular activity that you're connected to, you're also going to have the job of writing your college essay, and that's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah. Absolutely. And turning our attention from admissions piece to the actually studying for the SAT and ACT. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think that there's a cycle that you need to get into where you are practice testing and evaluating yourself, then focusing on specific parts of the test and reviewing. We talked about those things. Another really beneficial study method that I don't think a lot of people know about is direct path study. That is where you are actually giving yourself the correct answers before you do the question. and working towards the correct answer. If you think about why this works, it's a really, really helpful way to warm up for any study session that you do, because for the period of time that you're doing the question, you're on the right path from the question to the answer choice, and you're spending a lot less time sort of wandering around the woods looking for the correct answer. And so it's a good way to warm up. It helps build confidence in students, and it gets them used to the feeling of moving through a test quickly, so that muscle memory of being good at something, even early on while they're studying. So that's a good thing to do. Moving on, what does a study session look like? Well, we talked about the warm up, and what you can do is sort of do some direct path study during the warm up, where you're working towards correct answers and getting your brain juices flowing. Then you seek out some instruction, whether it's videos online or actually working with a tutor or in a class, whatever it is, instruction on strategies in the test and specific concepts that are represented on the test. Then after you go through a period of instruction, it's time to go focus on that stuff and practice it. And then at the end, it's a good idea to kind of mix everything up, get yourself random question types, and work on a couple different sections, so that you're sort of replicating the way that questions are kind of coming at you during the test itself. So it's important that, to see focused work, but it's also important to mix things up so you can recognize the concepts that are being tested. So this is the anatomy, I guess, of a single study session. If you do these 4 things, you're doing a good job. What else should you do when you're studying? Well, you're going to have if you have a bucket of material, if you have a bunch of stuff to work from, and there's lots of different ways to get it. We, of course, certainly have lots and lots of resources for study and instruction. But as you're working through stuff, you're going to get this bucket of stuff you've seen before. And it's important to occasionally pull questions from that stuff you've seen before, because studying for the SAT and ACT is like spinning plates. And you're trying to keep as many plates balanced as you can before you go into the test. You're like, I'm holding on to all this information. I got to look at algebra over here, and I've got some trigonometry over here, and I got geometry over here. And you're trying to hold on to all that stuff. And so the easiest way to do that is to continuously incorporate stuff that you've studied before into your practice sessions. And so pay attention to the stuff you've seen and also to what you haven't, so that you can, focus on the new concepts and questions you have yet to tackle in a systematic way, right? And that's why the ranked areas of opportunity I put on the right. I mean, this can be for anyone, but you should always, at any point in time, and with the Testive adaptive learning system that we have, it gives you analytics that kind of tell you what these things are. Like, what is my best area, my biggest area of opportunity right now? Well, if you have something like the Testive system that you're working out of, you'll know. You know what your area of opportunity is, and you'll be able to focus on it. But at any point in time, you should know where your biggest problem spots are, and you should kind of have a general ranking of what those things are, so you can focus on those things in order. Moving on, I know we are running out of time, so we're going to move quickly through the rest of the year. Let's talk about test preparation for the summer. I know we don't have a lot. I don't have a lot to add, because a lot of what we talked about in spring was sort of getting ready for the summer when you have a little bit more time to study. But yeah, this is where the bread is made, right? Your summer, that summertime is like a really, really good opportunity to get some longer sessions in. During school, students are really busy right now. They have more on their plate than ever. It's still really beneficial even to just do 5 or 10 questions a day. That's a great thing to do to keep it sort of top of mind. And you will get better even just doing 5 or 10 questions a day. You will still get better if you're doing that. And over the course of months, that time adds up for sure. Over the summer, now is a good opportunity to dive into stuff and work really, really hard on it. When I say that, I do want to warn people against doing extra long study sessions. It is not that beneficial. Learning Science has borne this out. Not that beneficial to sit down and study for 3 hours. I learned that in law school too. It's not that beneficial to study for 3 hours at a time. Your eyes get tired. You stop retaining information. And so if you can break your study sessions up into 45 minutes to an hour periods, and then take a break, even if it's just walking around your house 5 times and going back in and studying again, it helps. So have lunch, go hang out with your friends for a little bit, and then do another session. That's more beneficial to break your study sessions up into smaller pieces if you can. If you can't, look, you got to deal with the cards you're dealt. And so, if the only time you have to study is a 3-hour window on Saturday, then I understand that. You do what you have to. Ideally, though, you break your study up into smaller pieces.
I've done jumping jacks breaks before. That's worked pretty well.
Yeah,
it makes me look crazy in the library, but
it does.
I'm gonna have to I'm going to have to hop off real fast. I have a session I have to go to, a tutoring session.
Of course,
but
thank
thank
you.
you for allowing me to join you all. And I hope you all, got all your questions answered. And, feel free to reach out to us with any more you have.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
College apps over the summer. I think you kind of addressed this too. We kind of talked about spring, like branching into summer. So let's move into the fall. So test prep for 10th and 11th graders in the fall. If you're a 10th grader, then look, you're right in the season of preparation. The fall is when you're going to be actively taking many of the courses whose material is represented on the test, especially in math. That fall and that spring, you're actually going to be actively in those classes. So that's a benefit to your study, certainly. If you're an 11th grader, the fall is your last opportunity. This is your last chance to really get your test score in. And so you have a couple of tests that you can take in the fall that represent, that one last shot. For a lot of students, if you've done your job and you started early and you still want to take a test, it's usually because you recognize an opportunity. You don't think you quite squeezed all the points out of the test that you can, and you just want to give it one more shot. And that's totally fine. At that point, your study can look hyper specific. It's like, man, I missed points on trig, but I'm getting everything else, or I'm getting most of the other things. I just got this one problem spot. And so you can go hard. With a tutor, maybe if you need one, it certainly helps a lot to get that kind of insight. But instead of just getting a tutor for every single part of the test, if you get to this point and you notice you have a problem spot, getting some additional help and going for it is a good idea, even at this late stage in the game. Fall for college apps.
Yeah, fall 2022. If you are currently a 10th grader, that means you're starting to be, by that time, in the throes of your junior year, which is going to be the toughest year yet, probably. I think that is the year where you go and it's like the main event, So by the time, probably soon, your goal will be to pick classes for your junior year. And I think one thing that people ask questions about a lot of questions that I get is, okay, should I just try to get as many APs under my belt as possible and then get a lower GPA, or should I try to set my sights a little bit less high but get a great GPA? I think it's all about knowing yourself and trying those things right now as a 10th grader. And testing what your abilities are. I think time, again, is such a limited resource as a student. And so if you're going to be spending several hours a day on AP US history when you are not going to do that great on it and you want to go pre-med, then maybe it's not the best use of your time, right? It's all about evaluating those returns on investments like we were talking about. Now, certainly you want to, if you're capable and if you feel like it's in things that you're really interested in, try to pursue those opportunities academically, and follow the most challenging path or the most challenging path for you, right? That still can have you as a high performing student. But it's always a tough balance. I think a lot of students get there by trial and error, and they start to understand their strengths by that point. But by junior year, you want to start challenging yourself in courses that you're super excited about, and also things that you might want to eventually study. If you are an 11th grader in the fall, you're going to be a senior. So it's all of that kind of deadline that we were talking about before, which is Common App opens August 1st. And then it's really just a full sprint to the finish to November 1st. If you've got a lot of those tasks under your belt during the summer, then it's more of a walk. But if it's not, then it's a big sprint. And so that's why we are saying summer is so important. Otherwise, if you're a senior fall, you've got, a successive deadline from September 1st all the way up to January 1st. You want to start hitting those deadlines for yourself. The big one, though, early applications would be November 1st.
Moving on to test prep in the winter for 10th and 11th graders. So first of all, let me address 11th graders first. If you're an 11th grader now, this coming winter, you are done testing. You've got your scores in the books, and you're sort of just doing the other parts of your app, or really a lot of times have your stuff in at that point. And winter is the fun part, which is like the waiting game of seeing where you get accepted, which is what all this hard work was for. If you're a 10th grader now going into the winter, my advice is similar to what it was over the summer. Again, your junior year is a really important year academically. And so, you got to make sure that you're not letting your grades slip because you're focusing too much on this other stuff. I mean, the grades come first, and then whatever time you have that's on top of that is the time that you use to prep for the SAT and the ACT. However, over the winter, you have the advantage of some holiday breaks, and those holiday breaks for 10th graders who will be 11th graders this winter, those holiday breaks are another great time to kind of like hit the books pretty hard. Not too hard, because I still want people to enjoy their families and friends during the holidays. I really, really strongly preach to all my students that you don't want to make your life about the test preparation process. No, that doesn't sound very fun. Like, there's absolutely such a thing as like a proper balance here, a work-life balance, where you're working hard, but it's never the case that it consumes you in any way. So, college apps.
Yeah, and I'm just going to piggyback on what Scott was saying and say that downtime is the thing that will make you a higher performer. Just learning what brings you joy and doing things that actually like restore you. Those are things that are really important that colleges also look at now. And I have students who actually make that a component of their application. So I had a student who wrote about joining the gardening club as an outlet for the rest of her crazy schedule, and how it's like how she learned about mindfulness. There are all of these things that there's so many formal activities and so many commitments that you guys have, but you also want to work on really finding those things that actually make you refreshed, and then you can come back to your work and really do an amazing job. So yeah, Scott had touched on what winter of senior year is like for current 11th graders. It's a waiting game, but it's an exciting waiting game. And you probably have heard some early decisions have already come out by this point. So you might have already heard something. But if you are in your mid junior year in the winter, obviously you're going to be working on a lot of challenging classes, starting to think about that school list too. I think also visiting a couple of schools, COVID allowing, is definitely also a fun winter activity. Even though I know it is sort of part of the college prep process, it's cool to go see places, especially now in COVID when I'm stuck inside, when everybody is stuck inside.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely do want to avoid like winter, especially if you're an 11th grader now and you're a 12th grader this winter. It's like, you're almost there, and you can like see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you really want to try to avoid senioritis. I know that's this whole senioritis thing is cliche, but like I got a little bit of senioritis and it didn't help me with anything. I know to some degree it's human nature. You're super excited about you're about to embark on this huge next part of your life, and so it's pretty easy to lose focus. But if you lose focus too badly, it can actually affect whether or not you get into schools or not. They can pull acceptances.
Yeah, so, I have seen it before. I've seen it before with a couple of my kids.
Yeah, it's brutal. Moving on to, we're not going to talk too much about essays. We can talk about that in a future webinar. It was more important to talk about sort of the changing SAT and that kind of thing. I do want to first of all, just leave some time for Q&A, and we ran slightly over. So please feel free to ask any questions at all right now. We're happy to answer any of them. I also want to talk a little bit about Testive. Testive is our learning management system that we use with all of our tutoring packages. You can also just use it by itself as like an asynchronous study tool. So it has lots of different uses. The key to Testive, though, is that it is an adaptive learning platform. And so we talked earlier about making sure that you're always focused on the stuff that's most important for you to focus on. The hard part is like figuring out what that is. And Testive takes care of all of that stuff for you. As you're working, it pays attention to the questions you're getting right and wrong, and begins to feed you questions that are most relevant for you to see. So you're always focused when you're studying, always focused on the stuff that means the most to you. Kate Crockett.
Oh, I just thank you. I couldn't get off mute. No, thank you, Scott. So after you guys were able to hear everything about what we've outlined, I'm sure you guys are taking away some valuable information, and mostly around the importance of planning. The past few years have been a whirlwind. So SAT and ACT have been throwing lots of curveballs. We've all been a part of a global pandemic. So planning is more important than ever now. I promise you will feel better once you kind of map it out, talk to some subject matter experts like us here, and let us help. So yeah, like Scott was saying, in light of everything going on with the SAT going digital, we wanted to bring you guys an offer that was essentially around our digital testing experience. So I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to try it out. We do receive, you can receive 2 weeks of free access by booking a call with us, but most importantly, walk away with that roadmap that your student's going to feel comfortable kind of like knowing what to expect over the next few years until they reach those college-bound goals. So I'm going to put a link up here, and if you guys want to book a call, again, that's free. Great opportunity to chat with one of us here. But yeah, a massive thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. We love the opportunity to bring what we're hearing in today's testing and educational world to you all. And this was super exciting for us to also ride the coattails of the College Board's announcement of the SAT. So just, or College Board announcing the SAT. So yeah, just really excited to further support you all. So I will go ahead and include that here in the chat. But again, my name's Kate. We'll include all of our contact information in the chat as well. So if you guys have any questions, you can always direct those directly to one of the three of us here.
Kate Manier and I are happy to talk to anyone one-on-one and help you come up with a plan for your study. You know, whether or not you decide to pursue a program with us or not, this is what we do, and we're really happy to help in all cases. And just to kind of give you an extra tidbit about Testive. Testive gives you the opportunity to take a digital test and also take a paper test. So no matter which version of the test you're taking or which kind you want to practice, you can do either one. You can also print the test off and take it that way if you'd like to, because you want to replicate the test day experience. Totally fine. You can do either one with Testive.
Thank you. So yeah, again, thank you all parents for attending this evening. We're going to go ahead and leave the chat open. This is a great opportunity to get those last minute questions answered. If there's anything that you'd like us to address, additionally, if there's anything you want us to cover for any future webinars, let us know. We hope that you guys continue to use this as a resource around education updates and continue to come to us for advice, services, anything that we can do to help. So again, thank you all for attending. And Kate and Scott, why don't we hang out just for a minute, see if any questions come up. But if you guys will throw your emails in the chat, that would be great. Thanks, everyone.
What was in the blender, Kate?
I can ask. I listen. If I were a betting woman, I would put all my money on soup. Pretty sure it's soup. It smells like garlic and it smells very good.
And
Looks like we don't have any questions. We'll go ahead and go off camera, leave it open in case anyone else wants to schedule those calls. But great. Thank you both for coming, and we'll log out here in just a moment.
Thank you.
okay.